Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. This is season 11, episode 19, and this one is going to be entitled Broken on the Bridge. And we're not going to give anything away on that. We'll just get started on it. I'm here with Quenton Stroud and Arthur Mudakis, who is been away for a while and is now in Malaysia with Quenton. How are you guys?
Man, I'm fantastic.
Oh,
I'm
good.
doing very well.
Good.
I'm doing well as well.
So
Getting used to this warmer weather.
yeah, from the Australian winter. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
very very nice to be much warmer than it is here in South Africa currently in the Southern Hemisphere. So we're gonna
Yes, it's much nicer.
yeah, I bet we're gonna get started here, and we're gonna talk about people in the independent field / free zone. I'm using free zone because it's a little bit different to me as a higher class auditor, class 8, class 9. That free zone tends to connotate to me people who have taken standard tech and tend to deviate from it and roll their own processes and are a little bit more loosey-goosey than independent Scientologists. That's just my take on it. I don't know how you guys feel, but that's been my observation. And there are an awful lot of people who come to AOGP from the church, from the free zone, from the internet, from having bought a meter and played around with it and jumped into their own case. And it's just the stuff we see and how we fix it. That's what this is going to be about. So being broken on the bridge tends to more often than not be people are bypass cases. They've been introduced to the upper levels. They've been introduced to higher caliber processes or rundowns without being set up for it properly on a gradient. And boy, some of the things we've seen. So we're going to kind of do this as sort of a Q&A back and forth with Quenton and Arthur and everything like that. So, because there are things I just take for granted as a class 8, class 9 auditor in CS. So, shoot forth your volley, good sirs.
Well, oh, I think that what comes up for me the most is, especially coming from where I came from over the years of being a Scientologist, is kind of like overrun cases and cases that
Yeah.
it's like it's going over it too much. Is that a thing, and how does that manifest, and what would
Well,
we do as at ALGP to kind of address that?
well, what typically overrun is where, and the overrun cases, overrun means that a person has gotten an auditing process or processes or rundown or grade or OT grade, and they've been overrun on it. I have seen people who were audited on NED for OTs, new OT5. There was a lady in Missouri that I audited for 223 hours who was in her 80s at the time. And this is in 2014. And the church used her and her husband as an ATM. And you're supposed to audit new aerodynamics for OTs in short sessions. Maybe 2 or 3 in short sessions over a period of, let's say, an 8 or 10 hour day. They were taking her in session for 14 hours a day, and she was in her 70s because they charged OT level rates for the auditing, and she was so overrun on the level that she developed a horrible cough and was just miserable as a Thetan. And I had to go back through and clean all of that stuff up from a PTS standpoint. And that's how overrun you can get, where you should have gotten, well, let's say you should have gotten an hour and a half of auditing over the course of 2 or 3 sessions in a day, 14 hours. That's how bad it can get in a sense like that. And then you go to the survival rundown. The survival rundown wasn't written by LRH, and we've talked about this a few times in different podcasts. The survival rundown was something that was developed by somebody else. LRH canceled it in 1978. David Miscavige and company resurrected it, made some more changes to it, and busted everybody down from OT8 all the way down to where it's at the bottom of the bridge, and changed the objectives to the survival rundown and run objectives on it. I recently had a new PC tell me that they told him he would be on the objectives for a year. A year.
Wow.
Yes. And typically the objectives take somewhere between 1 to 3 intensives, depending on your drug history and the state of your case. Per the 1981 grade chart, it says it's CS adjudicated, but it's adjudicated as to what is the person in present time, how does their environment respond to them, how they respond to their environment, that type of thing. Can they start, change, stop? Are they in present time? That type of a thing. So 2, 3 intensives, maybe 36, 40 hours tops, averages, and intensive and a half, 2 intensives. And they're running this on people and overrunning it so much that people are dying from the overrun, because the objectives really come in with a crunch for people, and it sends the body into apathy, and they pull in sicknesses and go PTS to the overrun. That's how bad that can get. And what do you do about it? Well, you have to indicate to the person right off the bat, when you're doing an interview with them, or they want to get auditing, there they don't feel right, they're overrun on this. I'd like to indicate you were overrun, because you can see it on the meter, on the theta meter, in a remote
Yeah.
auditing session. Say, I'd like to indicate you were overrun on the objectives. And they're like,
Yeah, that feels right.
right. So, that's something you have to do an objectives repair list on. So in doing so, what you're doing is you're trying to spot where the person actually went release on an overrun. So release is, they've basically departed from that part of the aberration of the case, whether it's objectives or whether it's grade 0 or grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 3, grade 4. And you're trying to rehab where it was that they had that win, where they went release from that particular topic. But on the objectives, it keys out, it keys in, it keys out, it keys in, it keys out, it keys in, on and on and on for a year or more. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I had a PC in Washington D.C., and on the objectives, she would just go boom, and she would just crash, and it would be something as simple as like just be there, or touch that wall, or whatever, and she would just crash, and it would take her like maybe 20-30 minutes to even come to, you know.
Right.
And I'm not saying this to scare anybody, but I'm saying that if a person has been overrun on a process, it's a very real phenomena, and that can be repaired, but it has to be done. It has to be spotted, number one, indicated, and then repaired. So, gosh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to say something's not right. I don't feel right. Things are going wrong. If you've gotten auditing and things are going wrong, if it's in the church, if it's in the independent field, if it's in the free zone, and you're not doing well, then you need to get some repair. A life repair is the general term for it, but you need to get a case repair. So you're broken on the bridge. Now, there are lots of ways to overrun, but overrun means something keyed out, and then it keyed in, and then it keyed out again, and you're going on and on. So that has to be found and indicated. And it's very common with auditors who don't know their craft well enough, or as LRH says, the only 2 ways an auditor can go wrong is poor metering or poor TRs. Their communication skills are out. Now, that brings us to false reads. How bad can false reads get? Well, they can get pretty bad. the best story I have is how superpower actually came about. And this is in the Sea Org, right under LRH's nose. They did a en masse sort of looking for people who had evil purposes. And the guy, the auditor that was doing this for these Sea Org members, was mistaking an FN for a rock slam. And a floating needle is when a person is keyed out, a process is done, they're feeling good about something. And he was mistaking that for a rock slam, and a rock slam is this jagged slashing of the needle back and forth and everything, per LRH and in the book, E-meter Essentials. They are completely different. It's sort of the difference between a sine wave and a sawtooth wave. You just, if you saw it on an oscilloscope. So what happened is all of these people got a wrong indication and then were busted down and put into the rehabilitation project force, because practically one for one, these people were doing well and they were told, you got an evil purpose. You're going to go run around a tree for 12 hours. You're going to go painting buildings, or you're going to, this sort of thing. So false reads that's one form of false read, whereas you have an auditor that is, doesn't know his stuff and is mistrained and has misunderstood. False reads can also be wrong indications. And a wrong indication is no bueno, because if you tell a person one thing and it means another, chances are now you've given them what's called an out list. And an out list is sort of like, what's your favorite color? Because a listing question is a what, who, or why question per LRH. And you ask a person, what's your favorite color? The question is reading. It has to, per the laws of listing and nulling. And you tell them it's pink, and their actual real color is teal. So now you've given them a wrong indication, and that stirs up a whole hornet's nest. And now you've got a really big problem, because they're not getting the right indication because of a false read. Now, another example, and then you have to handle that and find the right item and indicate, what the wrong item is and all that stuff. Not necessarily in that order, but that's what happens. The person feels good when they're given the correct indication from a false read or a misunderstood read. Whereas a false read could be, you could ask a person, hey, has there been any false reads on your case? And if it reads, you find out what they are, you indicate to them on that particular thing, it's handled, and you say, okay, I'd like to indicate that. And they feel better about it. It's as simple as that. But there are lots of false reads because auditors aren't trained properly. Any questions, any comments, any origination?
Yeah, and so I guess my question is that let's say if a person has had auditing wherever it's occurred, and they've been overrun, or they've hit a false, or somebody improperly read them, or false read with them, how would they know it? Like, it's like in their body, in their mind, in their feeling, in their experience, what occurs that person says, oh my God, that's me. Like, I need to talk to somebody.
Well, I mean, a false read is a wrong indication. A Thetan knows, and it's like somebody walks up to you and goes, "You don't know them," and they just look at you and go, "You're a jerk." That's a that's a wrong indication. It's the same thing, except it's in a session with an auditor that you trust, so it might be worse. And what LR8 says is if you do this enough with a pre-clear, they start to distrust the meter, and they start to distrust the auditor, and they start to distrust the tech. Now you have a real problem because you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. So again, the only problems that really can occur in an auditing session are bad metering and bad TRs, or communication skills with the auditor. And so a good auditor knows, looking at the PC indicators, are they good indicators? Are they bad indicators? Are they very good indicators? But, sometimes people trust auditors so much that they don't know that anything's happened, and then things start to go wonky in life, and they don't feel quite right about that session. And when these things build up, again, like LRH says, bypass charge is the sum of the case. So bypass charge is something that's been restimulated, but not handled or not yet handled. So you develop bypass charge when the auditor says, you're a jerk, basically, through telling them about false reads. So
false reading.
that's another problem. Now that brings us to another type of falsity, which is prematurely or declared grades or the state of clear. Right. I've had people
falsely premature declared. So falsely prematuring or declaring somebody like you got that grade or you're clear, like congratulations. Like, wait, what?
Right. Exactly. And it can get so bad that somebody is told that they're a past life clear or they're a natural clear or something like that because they don't want to do the lower end of the bridge and they don't believe in it or whatever, which is out tech. And so the person is put on the upper levels and falls on their head and can't do it because the grade chart, the series of levels that you do in Independent Scientology Auditing are very, very small micro steps, one process at a time, to allow that person. You can't climb this, you can't jump from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs and get to the second floor. That's why there are stairs. So when this happens, the person tries to jump and then falls back to the ground because they can't make it and grab onto the second floor. That's an out gradient. Everything operates off of gradients. It's an axiom in dynamics and Scientology. So when somebody, we're going to say in this sense, prematurely is declared on a grade or clear, they won't make it because it's not real to them. We talked about this in the last podcast. Their awareness is not there yet because we haven't peeled the onion enough. We haven't gotten to the center of the lollipop to get the caramel center. Okay. So they might chip a tooth or whatever, and it's going to be very uncomfortable.
Painful, yeah.
Yeah, it's very painful. So, and the other thing is you can tell people, hey, you've done this. I think you've done this. And then they go, no, I haven't. They don't feel that they're there yet.
Right.
So that's why you have to make sure that you exhaust all of these areas of charge on a case at a particular level and check every question, check every flow. Flows are others to you, you to others, others to others, you to yourself. And then once you've done that, you've exhausted that tiny little question that LRH developed at some point in his researches on that subject. And then you move on to the next. And you systematically do this to make sure that you've left no stone unturned. And if you have, the person isn't going to have that release, that ability. They aren't going to be able to handle their problems or help like we had in the success story in the podcast last week from MX.
Right.
And so when that happens, you're giving the PC a lose, a loss. And this is what happens. Remember the podcast we did where we were talking about where people didn't get what was promised? This is that.
Yes. Yep.
This is that because they were cut short or they didn't get it at all in the independent field or free zone or something like that, or they messed around with their case and said, well, I don't need to do all of that. I'm just going to jump right on the OT levels and I'm going to do it myself. Good luck. Good luck. And we see that all the time, because people want to cut corners or I don't have the money for this. It's like, well, you need to start out on a gradient because otherwise you're going to end up in the soup. Now that brings us to missed withholds over it's gone wrong. And this is a biggie in the church where people are ridiculously over, sec checked, asked for overage, told they have missed withholds. And there is such a thing as a wrongly assigned. There's no withhold there. So that works as a wrong indication as well. And it can make a person feel really, really bad. And if you're over sec checked, it it reduces your havingness, because overts and withholds are havingness. They're something that the Phaeton aberratively has per LRH. And when you get rid of these things and you don't run havingness, which happens, the person kind of feels like a sweater that's been left in the dryer and was extra large, and by the time that the dryer was done, it wouldn't fit their infant. It shrinks down. So the person is interiorized to, it's a miswithhold of nothing. I didn't do anything, but they're telling me I did. I've had it happen to myself. And this can cause a lot of problems for the person because they're looking around for something that isn't there. They're being told they did something that they didn't do, and they're getting sec check after sec check after sec check. Now, the opposite side of that, what we see all the time in the field, is people tend to, organizations and field auditors and stuff tend to want to overlook overts and withholds and kind of avoid that area because they themselves were mishandled on it. So it becomes sort of a blank spot. And overts and withholds have their value in getting cleaned up. It restores a person's ability to reach. And when you overrun somebody on it, or you indicate that they need to do something, and when I say overrun, you're getting sec check after sec check after sec check, or
keep drilling you.
You keep drilling you on it. It's not good, and it can cause a lot of problems for the person and make them leave because they're being wrongfully accused. The church does this a lot. Now, the next one, too many repair lists, not enough actual auditing. This is where LRH on the Class 8 course in 1968 talks about you don't want to over repair a case. Scientology works so fast, he talks about the speed, the velocity of audit. And auditing velocity is fast. You know this. Arthur witnessed it on his life repair, and it was a lot of it was just word clearing. I mean, and the gains that can be had from that. And when the person has their win, let them have their win. Come back the next day, and you can continue. And if their needle's still floating and they feel like they're on cloud 9, okay, we'll see in a couple days. But you don't have to over repair somebody. And this is another thing you see in the church a lot and in the independent field, is this repair list after repair list type of a thing. It doesn't need to be that way, because that's a form of overrun. You're cleaning the clean. Can we just get on with the auditing? Can we just get up the bridge? And that's another thing that causes a lot of trouble.
Let me do me. Let me do me. Let me get through where I need to get through. And if there's a problem, we know how to fix it. We know how to repair the issue, but don't just keep trying to clean and clean.
Right. And it works so fast, it doesn't take much. So, a lot of repair lists are, due to a big win, or if there's no big win, finish the list. But that doesn't mean you have to do 3 more lists on different subjects. It just depends. You don't do a repair list on something unless you've gotten a read that indicates in an interview beforehand on the meter that says, okay, this is something we need to handle. You don't just do lists willy-nilly to see what pops up. You have to have some suspicion based off of charge that you've seen in an interview. Now, the next one, stalled or no case gain labels. Typically, why a person is stalled or isn't getting any case gain, there's one major reason. And we talked about this the other day: ethics, tech, and admin. A lot of stalled or no case gain cases are again addressed on the Class 8 course, because you have somebody who isn't making any motion, isn't getting anywhere. But the thing is they're stalled or no case gain cases because they're constantly out ethics, and they don't see it, or they don't want to get it in, or they don't see anything wrong with cheating on their wife, or they're PTS and they can't handle the person and they refuse to do anything about it. They will not get any case gain. They will be parked on the bridge. You see this a lot in the field because of this unwillingness to handle ethics.
Yes. And we see it even in the podcast too, because as soon as we talk about ethics, like there's this woof, like just a collapse of listeners, a collapse of people wanting to go through that conversation. And I just think that it's such a unfortunate situation, because if you really look at it, ethics tech and understanding what it really can do for you as a being is really, really phenomenal stuff. I really enjoy diving into it a little bit more, actually. That when you really understand what happens to you when you start racking up these overs and withholds and all this stuff that starts like crushing you down, you get that free, you know, it's a really, really salvific kind of experience.
Yeah.
And a case will stall or they will get no case gain because they're not cleaning up their ethics.
Yeah. And it takes confront. It takes a level of responsibility. And if a person doesn't have a level of responsibility and they're not willing to confront, you know that they're probably most likely, if not 100%, a bypass case. Okay. Some earlier step has been omitted. Grade 2, which handles overts and withholds, education on it before that to really understand this stuff. We see this a lot with people where the gradient has been missed. And so they're not willing to look at things because, well, responsibility is tough to confront, but without it, you can't get up the bridge. You can't get up the bridge.
Yeah.
Now that brings us to mental health mislabels, like psychotic breaks and things like that. That's not something we see a lot in the independent field. Misauditing can cause those types of things for a person. And, one of the worst ones was with the church and the Lisa McPherson case on L11. And they completely mishandled this girl and she died. It was a big thing in the press. She went out into the street, was in a car accident, took all of her clothes off in public at the intersection and all of this. And they took her away and put her in the basement of the Fort Harrison Hotel. Because what had happened is, and what we talked about earlier, really was that caused the psychotic break was that she had out lists and she was misprogrammed, miscase supervised, misaudited. That's how bad it can get. And boy, it takes a lot to do that. But that was an extremely unfortunate and sad example, and the worst case I've ever seen. And Pierre Ethier, the no longer with us class 12 from Newmarket, Canada, outside of Toronto, has some wonderful information on how bad that got because he was there at the time auditing. He was not her auditor, but very much knew what had happened and why she was mishandled. But again, it came down to bad metering and bad TRs, just like Ellerate says, and these case supervisors that were programming this. And there was a lot of misintervention and things like that by Miscavige on this whole thing that led to this. And he has no business dealing with anything having to do with auditing. That's another podcast.
But when I looked at it from a mental health mystic label kind of space, I was also talking about people who in the WOG world, like out in the real world, kind of getting these labels of that they have mental health issues,
Sure.
like diagnosis. I'm talking about like
Wholesale.
diagnosed stuff like that.
Right.
And yet it could be something different, or yet it could be, a different way of handling. So what happens especially in the independent field when we have somebody that might come to us that might be a previous psych case, like they might have had psychotic drugs and stuff.
Well, I mean, it depends on how much damage the drugs have done. It depends on the wrong indications that have been giving them, which one for one, when you see what you get from that walk of supposed mental health medicine, they've been given wrong indications. Or, bipolar. Bipolar
Right.
has everything to do with valences, and they don't know how to handle that sort of a thing, or borderline personality disorder. It's a difficult thing to handle. I will freely admit it, because there is so much charge that's built up there by these wrong indications. And then you have the drugs on top of them.
On top of it, yeah.
And the drugs now are different than the drugs were in the 90s. The drugs that they were using in the 90s to handle this stuff caused these MAOI inhibitors, caused the meter to read improperly on the PC. They don't use those anymore, thank God. They've gone to worse things that screw up the case even more. And if somebody has had a lot of these things, we may not be able to handle some of those worst cases because the brain itself is not functioning the way that it should. And then you have the stimulation of these drugs on the person's case, which are pretty strong, and it's a lot to work out. So it's a case by case situation. We try to help people as much as we can, but unfortunately, we do get people who are unsalvageable because of this stuff in the worst case scenarios. So, long walks, locationals, like LRH says, some of the basic case supervision technology is baby steps, light touch on this sort of a thing. Get them a Purif, get it out of their system, give them Scientology drug rundown. But you're fighting an upstream battle because you're dealing with valence issues, and you've got to get the drugs out of their system at the same time. And boy, it can be a mess.
Yeah.
So that's something that we have to deal with once in a while, and you really have to qualify people and find out where they've been, what they've done, that type of a thing, because to a greater or lesser degree, they are extremely broken on the bridge from wrong indications. Next, loss of trust in the auditor. That's a biggie.
Yeah.
So
I think we recently had that situation where it's like somebody just had to, like, they kept wanting to get reassurance that my information will be confidential, or how somehow their trust was violated by their previous
right.
auditor at the church.
Yeah,
Mm.
I've heard stories. I've heard stories from multiple pre-clears of auditors taking information from people's folders and turning it over to the police in the free zone, not the independent field. The church just says, "You got to go, baby." Now, because they don't want to touch them, they're a hot potato. And that's not
Right.
what LRH intended. You're supposed to help that person. So help becomes betrayal.
Mm.
That's not good. And that violates the auditor's code. But this is what the church does. I mean, I've had one PC who was kicked off of the Flag Land Days because he took Tylenol. This was just a couple years ago, because he took Tylenol. Okay. What? And people treated him like a pariah because he took a Tylenol. Are you kidding me? What's next? You had a cup of coffee? If that's the case, all Scientologists should be kicked off the Flag Land Days, because
Right. Because of
Scientologists
drug.
drink coffee, 24/7, 365. I mean, come on.
Right.
So, that's not just loss of trust in the auditor, it's loss of trust in the tech, which takes us back to the podcast where we were talking about not delivering what's promised. And it's not just not delivering what's promised, it's not following the tech the way that LRH intended it to do, because you won't give a person a loss if you follow what he says. He's a very level-headed guy. He's very thorough. He explained things over and over and over in many, many different ways to make sure people understood them. And he took the time to do that over the course of 3.5 decades. So what's the problem? And that comes down to that they don't understand the materials, and they have misunderstood words, or the materials have been altered and they're now not understandable. This is what causes people to have a loss of trust in the auditor. And again, I've said this in other podcasts, that LR8 says, if you ever have any trouble with the tech, it's not the tech, it's the personalities involved. And that is how you get a loss of trust in the auditor, because it's not being applied correctly. Again, mismetering, miscommunication, alterations in the tech cause people to do things that LR8 said not to do, period. And that brings us to number 10, suppressed spiritual wins. You're not there yet. For an example, people have gains or they're a past life clear, which happens, especially now, and LRH mentions this in the Clear Certainty Rundown um, technical bulletins, that as time goes on, we're going to see more and more people who went clear in the last lifetime, validly, I want to say, validly went clear in a past lifetime, and then dropped the body, died, and then came back. And what do you do with them? Well, the church says, well, you have to do all of these things, and it's going to cost you $100,000 to do it. And that's about the average these days. And it's not just the auditing, it's the books, the meters, the IAS, the this, the that, and it's totally unconfrontable. So this person who is actually clear from a past lifetime, sure, they need some cleanup and it doesn't take forever, and then they get their certificate back. That's the way it was supposed to be. That's what these auditing rundowns, the Clear Certainty Rundown, is for. Before that, the Dianetic Case Special Intensive. And the church changed the Dianetic Case Special Intensive, DCSI, and because it gave too many people too many options as to how they could be clear. And they omitted those and then made the Clear Certainty Rundown. And supposedly, and I'm not saying that this isn't the case, LRH had something to do with the Clear Certainty Rundown, but we don't really know. So there are two options. But the thing is you don't take a clear and force them to do everything that they already did unless they need to do it again. And that takes a thorough set of interviews. It takes thorough programming, and it usually goes pretty quickly. So then they can get on with their quote unquote lives and then get on to the OT levels. That's an example of suppressed spiritual wins. But a lot of time, what you see in the church, especially the corporate church of Scientology, is no, you need to keep going. Like we were talking about the survival rundown. The person went release on the objectives in intensive and a half, 2 intensives, and they're told, nope, you're going to have to keep going for another 50 weeks. So this gives the person a loss. Scientology is supposed to be fun. Scientology is supposed to be freeing. It's supposed to be emancipating.
You're winning.
You're winning, right? So you see a lot of this suppressed spiritual wins with the corporate church, and you see it in the field with unseasoned, well-trained auditors, where they don't know what the signs are that a PC is done. And it's easy to overrun, I must say, and this is some part of the problem, is if you haven't educated a pre-clear well enough, they just know that they feel good, but they don't know why they feel good, and you can overrun a person because they don't quite know yet what it is that just happened. They can't articulate it. We were talking about this before we got into the podcast, that the best success stories are written by a person who is educated in the tech to some degree or is a trained auditor, because people don't know how to say it. And so you get overrun. But these suppressed spiritual wins happen a lot, more so by accident than on purpose outside of the church. More so on purpose in the church because, well, if you mess somebody up, now you have to charge them for more auditing to get them to where it is that they want to be. Is we're going to have to sell you another gallon of milk. You can't have the cow. We're not going to give you the cow. We want to sell you another gallon of milk. That's what happens in the church. So the wins get suppressed. They get tromped on. The person gets a failed purpose. The tech doesn't work. And then they become a critic of Scientology, of which there are a lot of, primarily because of this.
That was going to be my next question right after this. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, that's all right. No, you go ahead.
Well, because I think that, for whatever reason, the people losing confidence in an auditor, people reading stuff and having misunderstood words, trying to look up like certain confidential materials or, clear cognitions and like doing all this stuff to try to, like you said, shirk the system or take a shortcut. And what ends up happening is there's no real trust. There's no real awareness of what the tech actually can do. And so what happens if, this is a question for you, what happens if a PC starts auditing and quits? What are they supposed to do? like they started, but then they just quit. Like I'm not doing this anymore.
Well, it's one of these 10 things is that something has been missed, something has been overlooked by the auditor. You can also have a pre-clerk can have a hidden standard, whereas their headache has to go away in order for auditing to work.
Work.
We see that a lot,
I've
and they
seen
have
that.
unreal expectations and assumptions about auditing, and it doesn't work that way. It works in a very gradient, slow thing. It doesn't, and when I say slow, I mean relatively speaking, and we've talked about this in other podcasts as well. A year worth of therapy, you can get the gains in auditing in 2 or 3 sessions,
Mm-hmm.
if
That's true.
not better than that. So
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened with me.
yeah, but I mean, it's also, a well-educated PC, a very well-educated PC tends not to do that and give up because they understand the underlying information on that. And we try to educate our pre-clears and pre-OTs as best as possible. And you can't assume that people know things. You have to check it when they come from the church. And I ask them, did you ever receive this hatting action? Did you ever receive that hatting action? What's the definition of? And almost one for one, especially in the last few years, when they come from the corporate church, they're not educated at all. It blows my mind because so many corners are cut, and they're trying to, get in there and get on the cans and get some wins so we can charge you more money. I mean, that's quite literally the apparency that it has, and that they're being crush-regged constantly, phone calls, emails, come into the registrar's office, the auditor's asking you to buy this and da-da-da and all this. And you're not even letting the person get any wins. It never becomes more real to them.
Right.
And that's a huge, huge problem. So, beyond that, and we've said this in another podcast, don't go looking at the upper level materials. Don't go looking at the clear cognition online or anything like that, because you're doing yourself such a huge disservice. So this would be like
Right.
point 11. Don't do that. Don't. You owe it to yourself to do it in the correct procedure. 9 out of 10 people that come to us have looked at stuff online, and it really makes our job a lot harder, and it gives them a loss because they didn't really make it. And LRH didn't leave handlings for people who looked at the upper level materials. This is something we've had to institute ourselves by a process of elimination on how to handle this stuff. And it's a very delicate thing that needs to be done. We can handle it and are very successful with it. But there are so many people that give people a pass and say, okay, you saw this stuff. Well, I guess we're going to put you on the OT levels. And then they fall on their head. And you can't let them do that. So
Right.
you owe it to yourself to not look at the last episode of The Sopranos without watching all the earlier seasons.
Right.
This is what I'm trying to say.
You're not gonna enjoy the show.
You're not right. You're not going to enjoy the show if you go to Chat GPT and give me a rundown of what Breaking Bad is about in 3 paragraphs, because then there's no mystery. And
Right.
what's the point in that? Now, of course, that's fiction. This is not fiction. The stuff that LRH talks about is real. It's palpable, and it has to be approached on a gradient. Without that gradient, you will not get the fruits of that, and you owe it to yourself. Respect yourself. Love yourself. Don't do this. It's out there. Yes. Should you look at it? Hell no. Because the gains that you can get from Scientology and Dianetics and the OT levels are heretofore unseen before it came on the scene, and you can get so very much out of it. You can be the richest being on the planet for you. And I don't mean financially, I mean spiritually. You owe it to yourself to keep your ethics in and not do this, because it is such a common thing these days. I beseech you as a listener, don't do it. Do it the right way. Keep your ethics in. So Any questions we have in closing on this topic of broken on the bridge?
I think we covered it. I think that if anyone is feeling broken on the bridge, they've started and failed somewhere, or had any of these phenomena or anything these things happen to them, that just knowing that we have an understanding, a thorough understanding, in fact, of where they may be, if they fall in any of these places, and how to help them. So I think this is really good. This is a very, very good conversation, because I don't know if this has ever been really talked about publicly. Like, who wants to go around talking about, oh, it didn't work for me, and here's why, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's once you've been in the tech as long as we have, and you've seen the gains that are possible, and you've studied it, and you've applied it, and you've done internships, and all this stuff. Just like anything else, when you really understand something, it's easy, and it's not this miasma of all this confusion and everything. It's really, really simple to repair people on things. And they may not know what it is, but they know that it is. Something is wrong. And you need to come to us and talk to us, and we'll get you a theta meter. We'll get you in session. We'll find out what's going on, where you're broken on the bridge, where I've just never been able to get on the bridge. I haven't been able to progress from this point, which would call for case cracking. There's something that needs to be resolved, or there's some sort of ethics situation that's going on. And it's all confrontable. It's all confrontable with us, with ARC and KRC, Affinity, Reality, Communication, Understanding, Knowledge, Responsibility, Control, Power. We can help you with this. And I say this at the end of every podcast. We love you. This is a labor of love that we do these podcasts. We understand how scary it is, and what case turns on and everything. And you want to be happy. You want to be successful. You want to flourish and prosper. You can. You can. All you have to do is get in communication, and we will help you and put you on the right path so that you can get across that bridge.
There you go.
So for Quenton, Arthur kept popping in and popping out because his internet is very unstable where he's at in Malaysia. We
Yeah,
hope to
sorry guys.
get that fixed. He already was here in spirit, if not in audio, which is okay. We understand, and there's always that getting out of non-existence as to what's going on with the Wi-Fi wherever you're at in this day and age, especially.
Yeah, new place.
So for Arthur, Quenton, and myself, take care, and we'll talk to you in the next podcast in the next day or two. Namaste, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Thanks guys. Bye bye.